Lynn, and do people are people familiar with her?
Ooh.
Maya Lynn?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe.
Well, I think she's mostly known for creating the Vietnam Vet Memorial
Mhm.
in DC. And there's kind of an interesting backstory to her selection and working on that. And then I'm going to go into more of her current work also. So I'm going to go ahead and share. Oops. Okay, Mai Lin. Here's the Vietnam Vet Memorial, if you haven't seen it. I did actually get to see it live a few years ago. Quite stunning. She was born October 5th, 1959. She's an American architect and sculptor. And in 1981, while she was an undergrad at Yale University, she achieved national recognition when she won a national design competition for the planned Vietnam Veterans Memorial in DC. She has designed many memorials, public and private buildings, landscapes, and sculptures. Although she's best known for historical memorials, she's also known for environmentally themed work, which often addresses environmental decline. She draws inspiration from architecture of nature, but believes that nothing she creates can match its beauty.
Mm.
So she's born, whoopsie. She was born in Athens, Ohio. Her parents immigrated from China to the US, her father in 1948 and her mother in 1949. And they settled in Ohio before she was born. Her father, Henry Hoon Lin, born in Fujian, China, was a ceramicist and dean of the Ohio University of College of Fine Arts. And her mother, Julia Chang Lin, was born in Shanghai as a poet and a former professor of literature at the Ohio University. And according to Lin, she didn't even realize she was ethnically Chinese until later in life. And that only in her 30s did she acquire interest in her cultural background. She attended Yale University, where she earned a Bachelor of Arts in 1981 and a Master's of Architecture in 1986. So, whoopsie. As I mentioned, in 1981, at the age of 21, still undergrad, she won a public design competition. And her design was one of over 1,400 submissions. And it was a blind submission. So she just submitted her designs. They knew nothing about her, how old she was, that she was a student, that she was of Chinese descent. The memorial is a black granite wall with the names of 57,939 fallen soldiers carved into its face. 100 more were added since the dedication. It's a V-shaped memorial, and one side points towards the Lincoln Memorial and the other side towards the Washington Memorial. And it was completed in October 1982 and was dedicated in November 92. So her intention was to create an opening or a wound in the earth to symbolize the pain caused by war and its many casualties. She said, I imagine taking a knife and cutting into the earth, opening it up, and with the passage of time, the initial violence and pain would heal. So here's kind of a blurry but aerial view of the memorial, which kind of takes on a really different look, I think, than I realized what it looked like being on the ground. Here's another view of it. And so the The design was initially controversial for several reasons. Its untraditional design, Lynn's Asian ethnicity, and her lack of professional experience. And some objected to the exclusion of surviving veterans' names. Others complained that the dark complexion of the granite claimed that it expressed a negative attitude towards the Vietnam War. So Lynn had to defend her design before US Congress, and a compromise was reached. The three soldiers of bronze depicting a group of soldiers and an American flag were placed to the side of her design. The memorial has become an important pilgrimage site for relatives and friends of dead soldiers, many of whom leave personal tokens and mementos in memory of their loved ones. In 2007, the American Institute of Architects poll reached, excuse me, poll ranked the memorial number 10 on the list of America's favorite architecture. It is one of the most visited sites on the National Mall. It also serves as a memorial for veterans of Afghanistan and the Iraq wars. Lynn once said that if the competition had not been held blind with designs submitted by name instead of number, she never would have won on account of her ethnicity. So her other work about the environment is something that she's been concerned with since she was very young, and she dedicated much of her time at Yale to the environmental activism. And she attributes her interest to the environment to her upbringing in rural Ohio and nearby Hopewell and Adena Indian burial mounds inspired her from an early age. Noting that much of her later work has focused on the relationship people have with their environment, she expresses that in her earthworks, sculptures, and installations. Her work uncovers hidden histories to bring attention to landscapes and environments that would otherwise be inaccessible to viewers, and deploys the concept to discuss the inextricable relationship between nature and the built environment. She constructs her work to have a minimal effect on the environment by utilizing recycled and sustainable materials, by minimizing carbon emissions, and by attempting to avoid damage to landscape and ecosystems where she works. So this is one of her pieces made of marbles that depict a river system. Again, now at the moment I can't remember what river system it is, but I think it's going to be in one of the videos. And this is another work she did where she buried these waves underneath the ground and then grew this meadow over the top of it. And that's going to be discussed more. And this is one made of wood. So I have a lot of videos I want to show you because a lot of them are short. They're not very long. So all right, let's look at a few of these.
We're in Washington, D.C. on the Mall at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial,
which is situated right between the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial. Maya Lin, the architect of the memorial, thought about uniting the memorial to the nation's past, bringing together the past and the present.
Well, it's this very long series of slabs of stone, this highly reflective black granite that actually points to both of those monuments.
Although the architect didn't like to refer to these as walls, but in a way they are walls. They're very thin, sunk into the ground, and inscribed with the names of the servicemen who died in the Vietnam War.
Now there are more than 58,000 names, and in fact, more names are being added. It is overwhelming in the density of names. What happens as you walk down this path, you sink into the earth opens up and reveals these names. And because the surface of the stone is so reflective, it becomes a mirror, and really all that seems to have substance is the rougher surface of the names themselves.
Maya Lin's idea was that it was the names that were the reality, the substance of the monument, and that the reflectivity of the granite opened up into another world that we could not enter, but which was there for us to see.
And she describes when she first visited the site that she wanted to reveal that edge.
Well, in fact, she said, I had a simple impulse to cut into the earth. I imagined taking a knife and cutting into the earth, opening it up, an initial violence and pain that in time would heal. She writes that the experience of the monument would help people to come to terms with the death of their loved ones.
There is a real journey involved here. You walk down in, you find the name of your loved one, embedded within the chronological sequence of the death of all of these soldiers. And then you walk back out.
That's right. In the center, the chronology begins and goes down toward the right as we're facing the wall, and then picks up again on the low edge of the left side and moves toward the center again. And as we move down the center, the path widens and the granite rises more than 10 feet above us.
The names become a symbol of this person, multiplied more than 58,000 times. But even though you've got that abstraction, you also have this very concrete reality. You have this place for family to come, to gather, to reflect on that name.
Maya Lin talks about the name as an abstraction that in fact means more to family and loved ones than a picture. The picture represents someone at a particular time, at a particular place, at one moment in their lives, whereas a name might recall everything about that person.
There is this powerful accumulation of all of the names. As you descend, as you walk into the densest middle of the monument, it becomes absolutely overwhelming.
And it's a very different experience than most previous war memorials. When we think about the history of war memorials, we often think about memorials to military heroes, like the monument to Lord Nelson in Trafalgar Square. Or we might think about the Shaw Memorial by Augustus St. Gaudens in the National Gallery, where you have a hero leading an anonymous army with an allegorical figure representing peace and death. This combination of allegory and heroism that's usually in memorials and is completely absent here.
How can one create a meaningful monument in the late 20th century? What does it mean to strip away all of the representational form? What does it mean to create something so self-consciously abstract and yet also so powerful and so meaningful?
Evidently, the committee that judged this decided that this abstraction would be best. And it's interesting to think about how the committee didn't know who Maya Lin was. There were 1,400 entries, completely anonymous. Maya Lin at that point was an undergraduate at Yale. She was an architecture student. She's an Asian American. It's interesting to think about what might have happened had they known who this application was from.
Well, once her identity had been revealed, there was real backlash and racism. And there was backlash also about the abstraction. Ultimately, that was resolved by a much more naturalistic sculpture adjacent to the main memorial.
One that shows soldiers in a very naturalistic way, three-dimensionally, which is also powerful, but in a way that feels much more public and far less intimate.
Well, Maya Lin was brilliant, I think, in creating a public space and yet tremendous intimacy. We can feel those names inscribed, and the act of reading is to come close, to internalize those names. Maya Lin's Vietnam Memorial is one of the most successful memorials in the nation.
And apparently one of the most visited monuments in Washington, D.C. In an article that was published much later, writing about her ideas for the monument, Maya Lin said, "It would be an interface between our world and the quieter, darker, more peaceful world beyond. I chose black granite in order to make the surface reflective and peaceful. I never looked at the memorial as a wall, an object, but as an edge to the earth, an opened side. The mirrored effect would double the size of the park, creating two worlds, one we are part of and one we cannot enter.
But even that black granite created controversy. She also talked about how she couldn't spec granite that came from Canada or from Sweden, two countries that had really good quality black granite, because there was too much political baggage, because draft dodgers had gone to both of those countries.
And one opponent of her design said, one needs no artistic education to see this memorial design for what it is, a black scar in a hole, hidden as if out of shame. Now, this is very different, I think, than what Maya Lin intended for the wall. She specifically took an apolitical approach and wanted the design to be about those veterans who had sacrificed their lives and not about the political controversy at all, not about whether the war was something shameful or something honorable.
Well, the country had not only fought the war, but then fought itself over the meaning of the war. But Maya Lin, I think, was very wise in sidestepping that and putting to the fore simply the names, the numerical power of all of those fallen.
And she wrote, the wall dematerializes as a form and allows the names to become the object, pure and reflective surfaces that would allow visitors the chance to see themselves with the names.
Mm. Okay, I'm curious what people thought about this memorial. Has anyone seen it? No, I'm kind of surprised actually that people may have not seen it.
I've seen it. I never want to go back again.
Really?
It was
Wait, who
so-
is that? Is that Lena? Who said that? I can't tell who's speaking.
It's Georgia.
Oh,
Georgia.
okay.
Yes.
And why is that you did you not like it, Georgia, or why do you say that?
Two of my classmates died in the war,
I see. Yeah.
and that's it. That's why
Yeah.
I can't go back again.
So very emotional. He had a personal connection with it. Oh, Roberta.
I'm wondering, how did Georgia did she find the names of her classmates, or how a person from a family who had a death ever finds the name? Because I noticed they're not alphabetical order. Yeah, they're by year,
Mhm.
but so many deaths in each year. I wonder if there must be a guide or a map, or I mean,
There's a big book that when I was there, there's a big book. You go through the book and it tells you exactly where the name is.
okay.
And it takes your breath away.
Mm. I thought it was very interesting that it's so different than other war memorials, and that she focused on the names and not on any representational form of, not the bronzes of the particular of soldiers, or but they ended up having, to put those into as part of the way to have people feel comfortable, or felt that it would make it more inclusive, I guess. So she was able to represent the deaths in a different way, and also that they said that the people could relate more to a name, or that a name meant more than a photograph of a person, or the physical, like a statue of a person. I thought that was very interesting. I think maybe because there were so many names that gave you more of a sense of how many people died, because they could never make that many statues of individual people. I mean, they could, but it would be that would take up a different amount of space. And that she wanted to stay apolitical about it. And just even the thought of where she got the stone for it became an issue,
Whoa, that was very interesting.
if it was from Sweden or if it was from Canada, she couldn't bring, and that those were very notable places for getting black granite, but she wasn't able to use it from those areas that she even had to think about that. I thought that was really interesting. Okay, so let me go into some of the other videos, but thank you for your comments and Georgia for letting us know about your friends. So let me see. Oops, did I? Sometimes I get lost if I shared it or not already. Okay, here we go. So this is some more, some other work that she's um,
Maya Lin is a pioneer. Her contributions to the arts are more than just about the work that she's made, the sculptures that she's produced, the monuments that she's created, the buildings that she's designed. She has really been a leader in thinking about what an American aesthetic is. Not just what American art should look like, but what it should actually do and what it should speak for. At the same time, Maya's work pushes at the boundaries of what art can be in America, and that it can be socially aware, that it can be beautiful, that it can function, and that can talk about issues that are going to be important for generations to come.
First time that the NEA really facilitated a project of mine. When I first stepped into Washington, having been chosen for my design for the Vietnam Veterans Memorial,
you go there and you walk through there and there it is.
Come on, keep going. Oh, I don't know why it's doing that. Okay, let me try and fix this. I'm gonna try to go to the oh, I know what's wrong with it. Okay, let's see.
His names.
Oops. Okay, let me try to share this again.
I guess in its simplicity, it's just the way that it was designed, that it's natural, it's earth, and like the names on the wall, they're not in any particular order, just the way they fell right there. It's the first time I used that, the way they fell.
Maya's work is very personal. It's very emotional.
There are lots of words we could use to describe Maya Lin's art, but my favorite is quiet. She creates a space of quiet that allows you to have your own moment of discovery and insight about place, about history, about who we are as people.
I had gone back to graduate school after having completed the memorial, and I had applied and received an NEA Visual Artist Grant, and it was huge. It wasn't the amount of money, it wasn't actually that much, but it was being part of a great group, and you could literally apply and get a grant from your government. I thought that was fantastic. They followed me around for, I think, 3 or 4 years to create Maya Lin, A Strong Clear Vision. I wasn't really aware of the NEA grant. I think I was a little embarrassed when it was nominated for an Academy Award. I was even more embarrassed when it won. In a way, the documentary was a little bit hard, and yet at the same time I was very grateful, because what I had done was, by kind of bottling it up, people had no idea what I had gone through. And I think from an artist's point of view, people should know sometimes what artists have to go through. We are there as artists to question and to push buttons and to propose ways of thinking that are fresh and new, and in so doing, they might become controversial, and that's a good thing. There will be a projector playing a 1940s actual film of Chinatown, so that from the outside, you'll know that you're almost looking into the past. You're almost looking at the Chinatown shop from a shopkeeper's perspective. It was 1999. I would get letters from a group called the Confluence Foundation. This is a project that focused on the bicentennial of the Lewis and Clark journey.
I had seen The Woman's Table at Yale. Antone watched a documentary about Maya and the Vietnam War Memorial. Let's ask Maya Lin. She's the one. She can tell this story through her art.
Automatically, I was like, well, this isn't really what I do. And then I got a call from the then governor of Washington State, Gary Walker. He said, would you just meet with the group? And into my loft comes the tribal elders of the Chinook tribe, the Umatilla, and the Nez Perce. I think it was Chief Snyder of the Chinook tribe said, well, excuse me, but Lewis and Clark did not discover this land. We were here. And we think you can tell that story, that multi-layered story. And I said, if we can look at the Pacific Northwest and not just look at it from a perspective that intertwines the Lewis and Clark story with the Native American story, but also from an ecological vantage point, I've said I do the project, I'd be honored. And so we started, that was in 2000, and we're still working on it. It will be my longest project. I know the NEA has been really wonderfully supportive. If we could look at this place, reflect back in time, not just 200 years, but deeper, but look at it from the different cultures that have lived here, as well as the ecological history of these places.
When we think of Confluence, it's 6 sites along the Columbia River system. Confluence and Maya Lin used the Lewis and Clark expedition not as a celebration of what those 2 explorers did, but as a moment in recorded time for us to look back. The descendants of the people Lewis and Clark met, they're still here, and they're still practicing their culture. And that's what this art and this education is all about.
I really did not envision a confluence that's a national confluence like it is. The tribes have this story. It's not only for white people or non-Indians, it's for Indians as well, to know what your people have done.
Maya's art makes confluence. However, if Maya had not worked with tribes many, many hours, listening to them, hearing their stories, that it would not have the meaning that it does. She was touched by their stories. They are touched by her art and long for healing that art and nature can bring.
I think this project would have happened if Maya Lin wasn't part of it, but not nearly as profoundly, not nearly as thoughtfully, not nearly as inclusively.
I'm very fortunate and very lucky. If my work that probably would never have been done without the support of the NEA, like if we go back to the Vietnam Memorial, if they hadn't had the funding to set up the competition, would I even be here today? If in any way my works, supported by the NEA, can emphasize how important it is for a country to support the arts, and hopefully I'm a good example, that I think it's really important that we let people realize how much the NEA has been almost the backbone, quietly, of major institutions in the arts, of artists in the arts, of public art projects. Man as a species has made art from the beginning, whether it's the Lascaux caves or the pre-Columbian pottery. We communicate. We use language and we use the arts, and I think it really helps define who we are as a species. And for a country not to support the arts would be the shame. I would say it's time we gave more to the arts again.
So I think that's really important that she made the point about how the arts really define humans, but also define the country, by having this. The NEA is, I think, a very important organization to provide these opportunities. And like she said, she might not even, if they hadn't had done the what do you call it? The call for the opening up the call for artists to apply for the Veterans Memorial. Who knows, she might not be, who she is today. And to get that kind of a project at 21, it's just amazing. So I wrote a couple other things down. But so did anybody have anything else they wanted to say? Oh, Roberta?
I have a question. How do you suppose you may know this from having your own designs shown in places, but how do you suppose she presented her design for the memorial? Was it drawings or photo, or there couldn't be photos, or models or sculpt? I just have no idea.
Well, I guess it depends, but I think they did show some sketches that she did. They were sketches and then a
Boy.
written description of it. So they were
Well,
very simple. Just I think there's just this green lawn which she drew this V in. It was very simple.
yeah.
So I don't know how much it changed after she submitted her ideas. I'm imagining it probably did change somewhat, but the whole idea she presented was to focus on the names and I think that stayed probably the same in the black, what did she call it? The cut or the slash in the earth. So
what a difficult decision that the judges must have had if there were, that many thousands, and if the submissions were that bare, that, you know, to get the impact of what was produced from her plan,
Mhm.
they would have to visualize that before they voted on it.
Yeah,
Again.
it would be interesting to see
Ah,
who the judges were actually, because
yeah,
it was
not
pretty
many.
progressive, a pretty progressive memorial. I mean, still is compared to, what traditionally has been done.
We probably could find out who they were if we were interested enough.
Yes.
I wonder how many judges there were.
I
Yeah,
don't
in
know.
the source, yeah. Well, something to Google after class.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Um, I'm gonna show some other things. 1 second. Okay, so this one's about the river, those marble ones about the river, it's about the Hudson River. Okay, where is it? Here we go. Nope, that doesn't look like it. 1 second. Hmm. Sometimes I lose myself on here. Hold on a second. Here we go.
My work has always been data, but also with nature itself. And
Okay, I want to just start this at the beginning.
spend a lot of
Okay, here we go.
my work has always been finding the art in the natural world. So I spend a lot of my time looking at maps. Some of the most beautiful things are carved and formed and sculpted by natural phenomena. I even chose the title, A River is a Drawing, because water flows and carves a shape through the natural terrain. My focus on rivers is because, from an environmental point of view, they are our lifeblood. Without them, we couldn't survive. It was irresistible with a show at the Hudson River Museum to focus on the Hudson River. I'll be looking at a lot of the great Hudson River paintings that are in the museum's collection. They're extremely aware of this natural Eden transforming under their eyes. And I don't think I'm any different from a landscape painter. It's just that we have many different technological tools to reveal aspects of the natural world and to get people to think of things that you have no idea are literally right under your feet. I tend to like to draw three-dimensionally. In fact, I've consciously decided not to make a normal drawing in the entire show. I'm revealing the main line in a bamboo sculpture that you get to walk through. I'm outlaying the entire Hudson watershed in 15,000 stainless steel pins. Another one is the major tributaries made out of marbles. As a child, I just remembered playing with these and thinking how much they felt and acted like water. It flows from the floor, up the walls, over the ceiling, and down. In all of these, the water is the positive space, which we never think of. We've got to see these waterways as these entities. You cannot isolate a river at one moment. To protect our waters and to understand these waterways, you can't just think of a river as a singular line. It's like the veins and intricate lifeblood of a living organism. In the end, what I'm really trying to do is find the poetry within scientific data, but also with nature itself, and trying to relay that into the handmade.
Okay, so that just was recent. That was last year or 2019. And then I wanted to show you something about the Wave project, and then another project she's that's just this year, I believe.
It's Governor Gavin Newsom. I could really use your support and contribution to push back against this Republican.
Okay. Okay, sorry, I had to get through that ad, but let me get to the Wave one.
What's been really the exploration for me is that, especially within the art, I've gotten back to my first love and interest, which is science and nature and the environment. So I'm always trying to reveal in my art a little bit about nature that literally is invisible to us.
For over 25 years, Maya Lin has been blurring the line between art and architecture, creating subtly minimalist works that suggest the natural world. Ms. Lin first came to public notice in 1981 as a 21-year-old senior at Yale, when, in a blind competition, her design was selected from more than 1,400 others for the Vietnam Memorial in Washington, D.C. Since then, she has gone on to produce well-received works in 3 different forms: architecture, art, and memorials.
What I've been doing for the last 20 years has been all about my interest in perceptions and possibly an ordering of the landscape.
Wavefield, her new earthwork project at the Storm King Art Center, is an 11-acre installation that will open to the public next spring. It consists of 7 rows of undulating hills, which are shaped like ocean waves, cradled in a gently sloping valley.
I often work in series in my works, and this will be the 3rd and last of works called the Wavefields that basically take what you think of as an identifiable imagery. We all know what a water wave looks like, but I'm always trying to get you to take a different look at it. The first wave field is in Michigan. The waves are 3 to 5 feet high. You deliberately can sit in almost a cupped wave, read a book. It's very intimate in scale. The second in the series tripled the scale of the site. So from 10,000 it went to 30,000, and the waves were much more reminiscent of how water travels over sand. So these waves were only about a foot high, so it became a very different relationship how you walk through it. And I always knew that I wanted to culminate the series with a field that literally when you were in it, you became lost inside it. So the waves had to become much larger than you. These waves range from 12 to 18 feet above your head. And whether you walk through a row of waves or whether you're walking wave to wave from the high to the low to the high to the low, very interested in how it changes. About a year ago, I started using my garbage to make artworks. And so this is one of the first ones I did. It's actually mostly FedEx boxes, and it's just a little recycled landscape. And then I started just working with my kids' toys, because it's almost embarrassing how much junk we amass. So these are all part of a series of toy asteroids. That one's actually bottle caps that'll grow to be about this big. And then this is something I did called 10 Degrees North, and it's a puzzle. It's a map of the world. This is Tibet, and this is North America, and it's a sectional relief of the world, but all maps, like if you buy a map in China, the Pacific Ocean is whole and the Atlantic is cut. So maps are inherently political and how we view the world. So this is cut into 52 segments, and you can shift it, and you can literally shift the pieces and shift your perspective on how you want to see the world. And so this is just a little study I did, and then this is a smaller version of what's in the Systematic Landscape show. And this is, if you look at it from up above, it's the Caspian Sea, and then we ended up doing data stats. So I just pulled it, just trying to get you to think about what's below the surface. I think my work has slowly coalesced. You know, I got out of graduate school being labeled as an architect. I never was able to choose between the architecture and the art. So one of my concerns was always, how can I do both? And it is hard, because I think they're tapping into very different aesthetics. And I would say that making architecture is like writing a novel. Making a work of art is like writing a poem.
You ever wondered what?
I wonder what she meant by that. She said architecture is like writing a novel and art is like writing a poem. I don't know. I don't remember her. I didn't remember that she said that.
It sounds like she's talking more about length.
You think so?
That's what I think. Yeah, that art is more of like a short form and architecture is like a long form.
Mm.
That's how I interpret it anyway.
Yeah, the breadth of focus, the degree of focus. A poem is like a close-up,
Mm.
and an architecture is, well, as whoever said it, the bigger design,
Mm-hmm.
more diffuse project.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? I don't think a poem it has a different structure than, say, a novel too. You know, it has more space and has more not so defined. You don't know what the beginning and the end necessarily is. It can be,
Oh yeah.
it could be a different way of putting together words, I guess. Yeah. Okay, I think I have one last video, which is about her current work. I have to say she's done a lot of work over her time, and and often I look for people I can talk about that have some videos to watch, and she had a lot of videos. So Okay, I think this is a video. I think this is an ad. Let's see. I want to get past. Come on. Uh-oh. I ended up going to an Audi video, Audi ad. That's what happens. Okay, let's get through this.
Every drive is a joyride. The thrilling Audi sedan family.
Maya Lin. Okay, here we go. So let me know. I'm not sure where I am with you guys. So let's see. Here we go. Okay, why can I not hear you?
Is because, you know, with the model and image of back to the program, and we find you in the studio, and I think you're sitting, you know, with the model and image of the Ghost Forest behind you. So tell me what it is, because it's dead trees, but it's not about dead trees.
Well, there is a phenomena going on around the world. They've been termed ghost forests. Due to climate change, vast tracts of forest land are dying out. Where I spend my summers in Colorado, it's beetle infestations because the winters are just too mild, the insects are not dying. And one season you'll see a little bit of rust on the tops of the trees. By next season, an entire forest can have died off. This phenomenon is happening in California, it's forest fires. In the East Coast, it's rising seas, saltwater inundation. So I was invited in to do a temporary artwork for Madison Square Park, which is a beautiful 1.5 acre site in the middle of downtown Manhattan. And I wanted to bring a ghost forest to Manhattan. And I wanted to raise awareness about this phenomena that's going on, a huge loss that is going on that people might not be aware of. In my art, I really like to connect you to what's in your own backyard. So these trees that that I brought in and installed, there are 49 of them. They're from the Pine Barrens of New Jersey, and they're all victims of saltwater inundation from a flooding estuary that had come in and overrun its banks.
So tell me, Maya, how you got all these trees and what your visual was. I mean, they clearly all look very uniform, same size. How deep did you have to plant them? And how long will they stay there?
The installation will see it through all 4 seasons. We've begun it with no leaves on the beautiful stately trees around it. Spring is now in full bloom, summer will come, fall the leaves will drop, and we'll deinstall the piece in November when all the leaves have dropped off the trees. So I'm trying to capture as well, as these trees continue to gray out and in a way start to decay, then the living forest, the nature surrounding it kind of goes through all its life cycles as well. But as well, I didn't want to, at this late stage with where we are with the dire effects of climate change, we are emphasizing through public programs and through 1,000 trees being planted in the fall that will, within 10 years, more than 10-fold offset the costs of our install in terms of carbon emissions, that we really wanted to focus on nature-based solutions to climate change, because I didn't want to just wake you up to climate change. I think we don't have much time left, and I think if we reform our agricultural practices, our forestry practices, our ranching practices, and if we protect and restore degraded lands, both land and wetlands, then we could absorb a significant amount of carbon emissions and protect biodiversity around the world.
Maya Lin, your works have been to an extent mournful. They have marked great moments of tragedy, but also hope. I mean, the tragedy of the Vietnam War, the hope of the Civil Rights Memorial in Montgomery. And this now, your climate work, it's about mourning, but it's about hope as well, about regeneration. This whole year has been about tragedy and grief, but you particularly have faced that yourself. You lost your beloved husband to a sudden heart attack, the father of your children. And I just wondered whether this was cathartic for you. How did you get through this particular installation in the wake of your personal loss?
Well, I think Daniel and I came up with this idea for Ghost Forest when we were in Colorado, and all last year we actually spent from March through August, the whole family, our two girls and I spent our time there. And Daniel and I really talked about the ghost forests and the beetle kill going on, ravaging the parts of the Southwest where we spend our summers. And I really almost feel this piece wouldn't be there if it weren't for Daniel. And in a way, the ghost forest really reminds me of our dialogues and talking about, how was I going to do something temporary in this spot? So it's a very near and dear piece to me. One of the things that I feel that all the works that have dealt with what I call them are the memory works is how can the past teach us to frame a different future? And I think what is missing, I call it the fifth and the last of the memory works, the memorials, though we start with making people aware of what is being lost in the natural world, we focus as much emphasis on conservation and hope. Basically, in a nutshell, when you trace an ecological history, if you go to the website whatismissing.org, you go to these timelines of species, rivers, cities. Oftentimes people chose to live where there was great abundance. First they pollute it with sewage, then industrial waste, and then there's this awareness of what they're doing. Laws come into effect, and lo and behold, like the Thames hasn't been this clean in 400 years. Beavers now are swimming and finding their way back to the Bronx. Nature's resilient. If we give it a chance, it will come back. It will not only reduce emissions and absorb emissions, between Project Drawdown and the Nature Conservancy, up to 50, maybe 75% of emissions if you really push into the wetlands. These are huge numbers, and we could also make our agricultural practices more resilient and resistant to drought if we can bring back the life of the soil. So these are all the things that I think each one of us can help in what we buy and what we eat.
Yeah, and your work is really, really showing that to us and to the whole world. It's really a lot of hope there. Maya Lin, thank you so much for joining us.
Okay. Oops. Stop. Okay. That was my last video. So she's quite an activist, and oops. Oh, I hope that doesn't go. Anyway, so I just wanted to bring you into your awareness, and I hope you enjoyed learning about her. And did anyone else have any comments?
Yeah, hi. I really admire her work. I was thinking of going to art and then maybe architecture, but I ended up in engineering. Along with that, you say art is a poem, architecture is a novel. I think engineering is like a research paper with a lot of facts. I do design walls, but I don't think I can win any awards with my design. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Okay, well, unless anyone else has anything to say, I think we're done for today, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Okay, see you later.